Now I want to get into an area that's very close to my heart, which is probably the all-important question of what makes for a good legal researcher. And a few points that I think are worth emphasizing here. One, of course, is grit and diligence. Legal researchers who shine above the rest are those who are unwilling to let go of a question until they've really tracked down the answer. In simple terms, these are the legal researchers who will go through 20 pages of search results on Google search, let's say, in the hope that they will find the answer they're looking for on page 20, instead of the researcher who looks at his or her top 20 results and decides that she has enough to go with. That quality of grit, tenacity, persistence is perhaps the most important quality for a good legal researcher. Another way of thinking for what makes a good legal researcher is to contextualize what the research is doing. And this is a point on which not everyone might hold an opinion like I do, but I think a good researcher is one who generates research that transforms the world in a useful way. So legal research is not something that's to be submitted to a professor and forgotten in that sense. Once you are talking about the law and once you are talking about knowledge relating to the law, you are talking about how things are, how things could be, and whether things are right or wrong. For example, if you are suggesting in a research project that India needs more effective institutions for environmental law, your research is contributing to a possible future that is better than the world we have today. And by my book, that is research that is socially useful. Another quality of a good researcher is one who acknowledges his or her limitations as honestly and transparently as possible. Of course, lawyers have traditionally been accused of being bombastic, pompous, and arrogant people by some, right? And I certainly think that that's not a justified view. I think legal researchers who communicate the limitations of their inquiry, the possible sources of error in their research method, are the ones who at the end of the day strike a chord with people who are looking for answers. They are the ones who allow for a more honest and constructive conversation on how that research might be relied upon either to approach a court or to carry out legal reforms or even to educate others. The final quality that I think is particularly important to emphasize when speaking about what makes for a good legal researcher is to talk about relevance to what actually happens. And this requires me to go into a little bit of a story on the history of law and the history of legal research. For the longest time, law was considered to be a science. It was something that was in accordance with perfect rules, and as long as law followed some logical rules, all was well. Somewhere along the line, people began to realize that law in the books and law in action were two very separate worlds. What was written in a law book was not what was being followed by officials, was not being followed by citizens. This brought us to a new way of thinking about law and a new way of thinking about legal research, that is, law in context or legal research in context. And this sprouted an entire industry of scholarship, books, and activism under the title of law and society. For me, a legal researcher is someone who is more interested in what actually happens in society, not what is written in a book or not what logically follows from a scientific rule that was crafted many hundred years ago but has no relevance to the way people organize their lives. So think about what you feel are the essential attributes of a good legal researcher. Finally, at the end of the day, each researcher is different, each researcher is unique, and each research project is unique. My thoughts have hopefully jogged off some of your thinking on the attributes of a good legal researcher and the attributes of good legal research. This is a theme that we'll return to in subsequent videos as well.